So there's this one thing that lets me know most of the time when an avoidant person is really starting to make progress. Leslie Wells, connection coach here. I help individuals heal, thrive, improve, and really connect more deeply by healing their attachment style and earning secure attachment. So if you followed me for any amount of time, then you know that I talk a lot about avoidance, and one of the key components of avoidance, particularly the dismissive avoidant, is when they're in their avoidant side, they are suppressing, distracting, they're pushing their emotions down. They are experts at not feeling their emotions. So it's really difficult when you're working with a couple to get to the real childhood wounds, triggers, fears, unmet needs, to really get to the real things to make progress and improvement on if you're unable to get in touch and access your emotions. And one of the big struggles with avoidance is when you ask them what their needs are in a relationship, they don't typically know, because your emotions and the physical somatic sensations in your body, those feelings, are your cues and signals to what your needs are and when they're being unmet or where your wounds are. So if you're not able to feel those things, you don't really know what you want in a relationship, what you desire, what you need, and what you're not getting. So we have to get past those surface level emotions that come up. And one of the biggest ones that I hear from avoidance is I am frustrated. And they typically will identify with frustration, but they will not acknowledge or allow themselves to feel anger. And there could be some shame around that because their parents, maybe a lot of times they saw a father who really was overreactive and responded in anger, and they were punished or criticized for having emotions. So they have sort of this negative idea of anger. And so whenever they start to feel anger, they will feel shame around it. So they shove it down, or they label it frustration, or that's just the level that they'll allow themselves to actually feel and experience. So frustration is sort of the level that they'll allow themselves to feel anger. And typically for the avoidant, that frustration is geared towards themselves, meaning that they become frustrated that they cannot calm their partner, they cannot appease their partner, they can't change the situation, they can't fix their partner's feelings or emotions or hold space for them. Typically that frustration is dialed inward. And avoidants really struggle with fear of failure or feelings of failure and feeling defective and broken. And so whenever they're not able to change the situation or fix it, this is why a lot of times they're not good at validating emotions or actually sitting in your pain with you. They want to leap in and fix it. That's the same approach they take to themselves. So whenever they start to feel anger, they want to fix it. They want to make it go away. They want to suppress it. So they usually will only let themselves feel frustration. And again, that frustration is typically inward towards themselves. So one of the things that I get really excited about when I'm working with a coaching client and they are an avoidant is whenever they start to tell me that anger is coming up for them. I actually think this is a great thing, and this is what I would identify as progress, because number one, if I want somebody to be able to hold space for the emotions of their partner, they first have to be able to hold space for their own. They have to be able to acknowledge them, confront them, experience them, identify them. They cannot hold space for your emotions until they hold space for their own. So sometimes I get some frustration from the partner when the avoidant, who has caused them pain and the negative dynamics of this negative cycles that they get stuck in, they're frustrated because now their avoidant is coming back with their own anger. And so I have to challenge you, if you are somebody who is with an avoidant and they are getting help, to expect this anger, and we'll tweak that and we'll make sense of it. But the fact that they're even feeling it tells us that progress is being made. If you truly want them to hold space for your emotions, they have to first get comfortable and familiar with emotions, period. And that starts with feeling the emotions in their own body. So the other thing I would say is that whenever we have negative cycles in a relationship, it takes two people to have those dynamics. And so whether or not you're with a dismissive avoidant and you feel like you've been treated unfairly or breadcrumbed, and there's validity to that. You are valid in those feelings, and that has been a real experience for you. But anytime there's a negative cycle, there are negative things that are happening for both people in the relationship. Avoidants don't slowly, gradually retreat from the relationship and give you the bare minimum because they're living their best life and they feel great. It may seem that way on the surface, but typically they are gradually moving away because they are feeling closed in upon and they are feeling unsafe. So remember that when there's a negative cycle, there are things that feel unfair intentionally or intentionally to both parties. So avoidants already struggle with so much shame, and they have so much shame centered around their feelings. So the last thing we want is for an avoidant who is trying to put words to their anger, to explain their anger, to feel and process their anger. The last thing we want is to compile that with shame. We want them to be able to get curious about those feelings because they are going to tell them something. So for avoidants, things are sometimes unfair in relationships because Their feelings of unfairness can very much stem from, I need space and you're not giving me space. That might be something, the anger that comes up for them when they're looking back on the relationship. Or it could be something along the lines of, if they're with a fearful avoidant, you're always making assumptions about how I feel, or you're labeling how I feel without giving me space to talk about how I actually feel. So there are things that still are unfair that come up, and the avoidant starts to feel a little bit of anger about as they are going through their work. And some of that anger may sound something like, here I am just trying to be a good person and trying to do the best I can, and it's never enough. Or if I don't do it exactly this way, it doesn't feel good to you. Or you assume that every time I need space to a process, that I just don't care, and you're automatically labeling me as a cold and callous person when that's not what is going on internally for me. So there are things that will come up that feel unfair or feel uncomfortable or don't feel right for an avoidant when they are really looking back and doing that self-reflecting that you want them to do if you truly want them to heal, that will bring anger for them. And so moving from that surface level of frustration to actually digging into the anger is going to help them. It's going to be the start of helping them to be able to identify their needs, identify their emotions, put words to that so that they can then bring that to you and use that as a tool to lean in and to take that conflict and take that tension and make something positive come from it and break the negative cycles before. The negative cycle before was the avoidant goes quiet, they suppress and push down their emotions, and you don't move forward in the relationship. You don't get anything accomplished. Conflict does not get resolved. So it has to look different as they're doing their work. So when I see somebody who's coming up with anger, I know, we are actually getting to a place where they're feeling their emotions, they're putting words to their emotions, they're allowing them to come up without shame, and they're starting to send signals that we can then question and explore to figure out what are the unmet needs, what feels unfair, what do I want to look differently, so they can start communicating that to their partner and actually have a more authentic relationship and actually create more intimacy around being able to have those conversations and build that trust. It's very, very difficult for an avoidant to go into the parts of themselves that they like the least, the parts that they really don't like. We already know they have a hard time struggling with self-reflection. So when they're able to do this, instead of getting angry and having that space of, oh my gosh, how dare they get angry when I've been through this, this, and this. This is a perfect time for you to lean into your partner and to recognize that they're coming out of that avoidant, that they're not suppressing, they're not shutting down, that anger means that progress is happening, and you can actually get excited about that. So if you're on the flip side of this and your partner is avoidant and they are starting to get their help, just recognize that if you get sent because they're angry at you all of a sudden, that actually is progress, and that is the start where you can start to be able to tweak stuff to be able to really improve and connect differently in your relationship. And that's a lot of what I do with my avoidants, is spend time helping them to sit in that space to deal with those emotions that are way beyond the surface level, that are very difficult for them. And so the last thing I would want is for a person to be able to be increasing those skills and being able to sit and linger in that, and then go to their partner, and there's not a safe space to do that. So that's part of the reason I do it in coaching, because they're able to experience that and practice it in a safe space. But eventually they're going to be able to have a safe space to do that with their partner if the relationship is truly going to change.